teach. Now, take out your teaching notes. We're starting a brand new series called The Trap of Offense. And I've been praying for and preparing for this series for quite some time. And as I thought about the trap of offense, I kept thinking about the phrase getting stuck. Because I think that's what happened for many of us. We get stuck. So let me just give you a little flashback to a memory here at CBC. There was a Thanksgiving time period. I think it was maybe 8 years ago. It was many, many years ago. We had just actually come to this property. And what we decided to do, a bunch of us decided it would be great fun to turn our lawn area, which at that time had no grass, to turn our lawn area into a mud bowl. So we literally flooded that grass area out there, made it muddy as all get out, and then on, I think it was the day before Thanksgiving or Thanksgiving, something like that, one of those days, we turned it into a mud bowl and had a mud bowl game. It was amazing. We had no broken bones that I remember. We had lots of dirt and mud. One of the things that most of us had not thought about is, so after you do all that for an hour or so, what happens when you're done? And so, we had hoses out there, so we sprayed all of us off. But what do you do after that? How do you get into your vehicle? How do you get home? And when you get home, when you have this mud-caked stuff on you, what is it that you do then? Well, most of us had not thought through that. Some people burned their clothes right away, shed them right away, just said, forget it, I'm never wearing them again. And I remember, though, trying to play in that mud bowl that it was so hard to get traction. You literally just kept slipping, and no matter how hard you tried, it was hard to get any traction. And I think some of us are like that when it comes to issues in life. We have an experience in our life, and we sort of get stuck there. It becomes the tent peg, if you will, that we kind of, no matter how much line gets let out, we sort of keep circling back to that event. And many times that event in our life, which becomes sort of the defining moment for us, is a place of pain. A place of pain where we get stuck. It becomes the defining experience of our life, the defining moment of our life, and no matter how hard we try, we can't seem to get away from that. In fact, many times that pain comes at the hands of others. People have offended us from what they said or what they did to us. Experiences that we've had become that place where we just get stuck. And I want to suggest to you that that is a trap. In fact, over the years of my ministry in local churches, I have come to the belief that really the trap of offense is harder for Christians, harder for people of faith than it is for people who are not of faith. Because as people of faith, we often don't really know how to deal with conflict. We often don't really know how to deal with pain, particularly when it becomes with people that we care about. And so if you take your teaching notes, I'll give you a quick little definition. We'll spend the next 3 weeks unpacking this and figuring out how to get past it. But this is what I call the trap of offense. The trap of offense is when we allow past hurts and pains to become present pits. The trap of offense is when we allow past hurts and pains to become present pits that prevent us from experiencing God's freedom of forgiveness and release. Christian author and speaker John Bevere puts it this way. He says, the trap of offense is often the most difficult obstacle an individual must face and overcome. Offended people produce really rotten fruit that destroys our soul and poisons our relationships. Freedom from offense is both possible and necessary for anybody who wants to experience peace in relationships and growth in life. It often occurs that we experience an offense. Somebody does something to us, says something about us, or in some way offends us, even if they don't know that they've done that. And when they offend us, we have a slight that's either real or perceived. It becomes a seed of resentment. That seed of resentment then gets planted in our soul. And that seed of resentment in the soil of our soul begins to take a corrosive and pervasive effect on literally our very hearts. In fact, think about this. I've been thinking a lot about resentment preparing for this series. Here's a statement that hopefully will grab you a little bit. Resentment is letting hurt take up residence in your heart. It's letting hurt take up residence in your heart. The seeds of resentment, when they get buried in the soil of your soul, can end up not only taking up residence, but the roots begin to intertwine around every aspect of your being. So I've been thinking about resentment, and I wanted to just caricature it for us, and so I made a list, and I want you to listen carefully. And I'm starting at a really hard place this week, but I need to. I need to get us to face the reality of this. I suspect that if we could have a little truth-filled conversation, It's not possible. But if we could, just you and me, and if we could just talk, and somehow I could be honest with you and you could be honest with me, almost every one of us in this room have had events or occurrences in our lives, breaks in relationship, things that have happened to us, things that have been said about us, that contain within them the little seeds of resentment. Now maybe you're here and you've navigated the course of life and you've never had resentment take root in your soul. And if so, that's awesome. But for the vast majority of us, little seeds of resentment have been planted in the soil of our soul. And I think they end up having a corrosive effect. So let me just read a few things about resentment. Resentment is the harboring of animosity against a person or group of people whom I feel has mistreated me. It's the unresolved anger I have over a negative event which occurred in my life. Resentment is the seething, aching, emotional turmoil I feel whenever a certain person or event is discussed. Resentment is the lack of forgiving, the inability to let go and forget. Resentment is the root of distrust and suspicion I have when dealing with people or events that brought me pain in the past. It's the unresolved grief I experience when I find it difficult to accept a loss. It's the result of being heartbroken after exerting a great deal of effort and energy to achieve something that eventually was lost to me. Resentment is the result of feeling that I was unjustly victimized with no resolution to the problem. Resentment is long-term suffering in silence when an open expression of hurt is unwanted and uninvited. It's the cancer robbing me of contentment in life. It's the grudge I hold against a person or group of people whom I feel has kept me from achieving. It's feeling offended but silent when I believe that a person or a group of people have ignored or denied my rights. Resentment is the root of my depression. Any of those ring a bell? Any of those, even in a small way, sort of resonate in your mind and your heart? Well, I can just tell you as a pastor for 30 years, and in the 48 years of my life, I can tell you that the battle against resentment is huge. And typically in our experience, it's not strangers that we resent. I will give you one major exception. When strangers commit a crime upon us or someone that we love, that can be a source of huge resentment against somebody that we don't know. But almost always, resentment comes from people that we care about. People that we love, that we know, that we give access to our lives, who are the closest to us. Their very proximity makes it possible for us to be hurt the most deeply by them. You think about a spouse that abuses or breaks your trust, a spouse who's unfaithful to the covenant vows that were made in marriage. You think about a father or a mother who breaks promises or is disloyal to you. You think about a sibling who's present in your life and brings great pain. I guess what I want to say this morning as we begin at a very hard place is that having lived my life the last 30 years in pastoral ministry, I've become convinced that resentment is a major spiritual battle. It's been my awesome opportunity and privilege to be with a number of people at death's door. And I can tell you that it is not people who've experienced pain in their life who have the most painful death. The most painful death I've ever witnessed are those persons who die with great bitterness of soul. And when their soul is filled with bitterness and anger and unforgiveness, death is very, very hard. The Bible says in the book of Hebrews, chapter 12, verse 15, "See to it that no one misses the grace of God." We just sang a few moments ago about God's grace, which is wonderful and given freely, His undeserved favor. But the writer of Hebrews says, "See to it that no one misses the grace of God, and that no bitter root grows up to cause trouble and defile many." The writer of the book of Job, if anyone would know about these things, it would be Job. He says this, "One man dies in full vigor, completely secure and at ease, his body well nourished, his bones rich with marrow. Another man dies in bitterness of soul, never having enjoyed anything good." If you've ever experienced the pain of a broken relationship, If you've ever experienced the reality in your life of something that has become a burden to you that you've carried, you've tried to leave it behind, but it still is in your present. If you've ever had a relationship where you've been mistreated, if somebody's ever spoken ill of you, if somebody ever spread rumors about you in such a way that you ended up being hurt by them, if you've ever experienced pain in your life that you found it difficult to let go of, even though you told yourself 100 times, maybe even 1,000, that you're done with it, you're over it, it's past, it's in the past. If you've ever experienced anything like that, this series is for you. And I have to take us to a really hard, really deep place this morning, because I'm convinced that as people of faith, the truth is that many of us avoid these kind of things because we're unfamiliar with the reality that just being nice about this stuff doesn't make it any better. That healing doesn't come until we acknowledge the reality of the hurt. And I want you to hear this clearly. This is a spiritual issue. There is an enemy of our soul who longs for you to be trapped in captivity. John chapter 10, verse 10 says it this way. When Jesus himself is speaking, he says, the thief, talking about the enemy of your soul, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. But I have come that they might have life and have it to the full. I want you to hear clearly this week and every successive week in this series that there is somebody who loves you, who cares deeply for you, who wants you to be free, who does not want you to be imprisoned by the pain of your past. Things that have been done unto you, things that you've experienced, things that have been said about you. There is an enemy of your soul who wants to trap you. And if the truth were known, if we could have these little x-ray pictures, and we can't, many of us would walk around today and there would be bars in front of us. We're in a prison of our own making. It's the prison of the pain of our past. And I want you to hear just as clearly that not only do you have an enemy of your soul, you have somebody who loves you so much that he wants you to be free. He came that you might have life. When Jesus announced his public ministry, he quoted from the book of Isaiah, in which are written these words, Isaiah 58, verse 6. Is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen, to loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke? If we could see those little prison bars in front of all of us, many of us would be bound up by the pain of our past. Many of us would have a heavy yoke upon our shoulders because we cannot forgive ourselves, nor can we forgive others who have hurt us. Now, at this point in the teaching, some of you are going, whoa, time out. I heard they had coffee and donuts here. I wasn't signing up for this kind of intense stuff. And you know what? If that's what you heard and that's why you're here, man, I am so grateful that you're here. It's going to be 82 degrees by 3 p.m. today at Lake Tahoe. It's awesome. I believe. So here's the deal. If you're here for the coffee and the donuts, man, it's awesome that you're here, and I'm thankful that you're here, and we serve the coffee and donuts so you'll feel welcome here. But I want you to know this. There is someone who longs to keep you from the spiritual peace, from the right relationship that the one who created you longs to have with you. There is something in your past, there's something in your present, there's something that you fear for the future that is keeping you from rightly relating to the one who made you. And the one who made you sent his only Son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross, to pay the price for you and for me so that you could be free and forgiven. And so we're totally excited that you're here for the coffee and donuts. But we have a far more passionate desire. Instead of serving you just coffee and donuts, and we want you to have that, we want to serve you the undeserved kindness and love of our God, who gives freely to all of us. Now I want you to write this down in your notes. Freedom is a gift. Freedom is a gift. There is nothing that you could ever do to earn freedom. God gave it to us abundantly. That's what grace is. It's undeserved favor. God gave it to us. It's a gift, but you must hear this. It's also a choice. God has done everything that he can do in sending his Son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross. He was buried in the ground. On the third day, he was raised again to newness of life. Over 500 people saw him alive. People staked their lives on it, and I testify to you today that Jesus Christ is alive. But I'm also here to say this to you. Freedom is a choice. You can know all the right facts about God, the Bible, sin and salvation, and live in captivity. God longs for you to be free. But you have to choose to receive His freedom. Now, quite frankly, if everybody could tell their story, if I could tell you mine and you could tell me yours, some of you would say, Pastor, this is all kind of nice, but I'm really kind of angry this morning. I've got a right to have resentment in my life. And I just want to relieve you of any sort of pain in your soul. I believe you. I know you have the right to be resentful. I know you've been hurt. I know you've been wounded. I know people have done horrible things to you. I know they've said things that are untrue about you. I know you've faced stuff in your life that you didn't deserve. I give you all that, I promise you. I don't in any way want to diminish that whatsoever. But what I want to ask you is this. Do you want to live in the prison of that pain for the rest of your life? Or do you want to be free? Because I know somebody who wants you to be free. Who wants to give that to you. I want to just divide the audience real quick. I wanted to bring us all together, now I want to divide you. How many of you use a Mac computer? 7 of you, that's great. Okay. How many of you use a PC? Okay. Now, how many of you with a Mac have ever had your system crash? Okay. 1, okay. 1 out of 7. How many of you have ever had your PC system crash? Okay, about 50% of the PC users. Okay, so that just was a little non-scientific research. Mac and PC are totally different operating systems. If you begin your computer life using a PC, what Mac users will tell you is, oh my goodness, you just spent your whole life with a foreign language. It's non-native. If you would just use a Mac, you would be able to use a computer that's an extension of your soul, and their blood pressure begin to rise. They begin to get creative thoughts coming, and if you've talked to a Mac user, that's the way Mac users are. But if you use a PC and you switch to a Mac, you have to kind of unlearn a bunch of stuff and relearn. And clearly, if you use a Mac and ever did go to a PC environment for whatever reason, it's a whole different world. Now I want you to hear this. There are 2 kinds of operating systems in life. 2 kinds of operating systems in life, and if you're ever going to get out of the trap of offense, if you're ever going to have your bonds broken, if you're ever going to have the yoke taken off of you, you have to understand both of these operating systems. And this week and next 2 weeks, I want to lead you to a place where we understand the new operating system. But you got to understand there are 2. So write this down in your notes. That I want us to learn to live in kingdom reality instead of experiential reality. Let me just say to you that the operating system known as experiential reality is the scrapbook full of all the things that have ever happened to you. I say many times that life is experienced as a video, but it's remembered as a series of snapshots. Isn't that true? As time fades, we don't remember all the stuff, but we remember a moment. We remember an event. It's fixed in our mind. It's rooted in our heart. Life is experienced as a video, but it's remembered as a series of snapshots. So there is an experiential reality, and that operating system works a little bit like a scrapbook. And I'm not talking about the one you have in your drawer, in your garage, or that you're going to get to someday if you ever break your leg, that has the pictures full, a tub full of pictures. You're going to someday put those all in a photo album, or you're going to scan them all to your hard drive. I'm not talking about that one. Experiential reality is that reality that is made up of all the things you've ever experienced, all the snapshots that you have of your video life, where you remember the good times and the bad, and it's all collected together. That's experiential reality. And I want you to know I don't doubt your experiential reality. And I want you to know that I believe that the facts of your experiential reality are true. You have experienced them. You have endured them. You have been abused and affected by them. And the good times have been really good and the bad times have been really bad. That is true. There is such a thing as an experiential reality. But I want you to know this. There's another operating system in life that if you have a relationship with Jesus Christ, you can choose to operate in. And that is not experiential reality, that is kingdom reality. And folks, I want you to hear this clearly. You'll hear it for the next couple of weeks. There is a level of truth that is greater than the facts of your life. So let's say you've experienced abuse in your life. I want you to hear this clearly from a pastor's heart. The abuse that was done unto you was not God's will for your life. Some person did terrible, awful things in your life, and they brought abuse to you, and that is your experiential reality. But I want you to know this. It's part of the kingdom operating system. That very abuse that happened in your life was not God's will. But in kingdom reality, God can take the pain of that abuse and He can transform it into the priceless pearl of His healing touch and freedom for you. You can be free. God didn't cause that pain in your life, but He can transform it. There is another operating system, and over these next couple weeks, I want to unpack that. I want to take steps towards it. And this morning, I have to take us really deep, because if I don't take us really deep this morning, we'll skip through the next couple weeks and we'll go, oh, okay, so I can just sort of say these words and be forgiven, right? And I can just be free, and it doesn't work like that, folks. It's a whole different operating system. You have to make some conscious choices about which operating system you're going to operate under. In 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 2 through 6, we get an inkling of that. And I want to just lean into this today. I beg you. This is the Apostle Paul speaking. I beg you, when I come, that I may not have to be as bold as I expect to be towards some people who think that we live, he's talking about people of faith, that we live by the standards of this world. For though we live in this world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. Let me stop right there. Some people are kind of taken aback by the militaristic and aggressive language used in the Bible. And they go, whoa, it's kind of a disconnect for me. I thought God was the God of peace. And I want you to understand this. The reason why you hear militaristic and aggressive language in the Bible is not because God is not a God of peace. He is a God of peace. But in order to get you to a place of peace, He has to take you from a place of battle. And in order to get you out of the battle, it has to be aggressive. It has to be something that's done that literally yanks you from one operating system into another. The truth is, if you're going to live in truth, you got to be able to live in that kingdom operating system. He goes on to say this: we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. We take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. I really believe that this morning we have the opportunity to begin a journey that will culminate in the next few weeks with an ability for us to be free in ways like we've never been free before. That some of us who've lived our lives with a tent peg and it was put in the stake in the ground in our childhood, or maybe it was a stake in the ground that happened at the end of our marriage, or a stake in the ground when our business partner ripped us off, or a stake in the ground when we were in junior high and somebody said stuff about us and it stuck in our hardwiring all these years. I really believe the next 3 weeks we can take that stake in the ground and we can say, God, if you're who you say you are, if you really are the God who longs to forgive and free and bring healing into my life, then God, I take that stake in the ground and I say to you, God, I'm going to put my whole trust and faith in you. I want to be free. I don't want to operate under external experiential reality. I want to operate according to kingdom reality. I really believe the next 3 weeks we can go on that journey. So I want to give you the opportunity this morning to be able to experience a season of prayer. But before we do, I want to ask you 3 questions. Here's the first question I want to ask you. What is one wound that you would like to believe that God could help you get over? Now, please don't raise your hand. Please don't say anything out loud. This is between you and God. There's a wound that's somewhere in your life, and I don't know what it is, and I don't need to know. But you and God know. What is one wound that if God is really God, and by the way, let me just be very clear. If you're here today and the coffee and donuts is what brought you, I am so happy for that. But you may be saying, look, Pastor, I can't even deal with any of this stuff. I don't even know if I believe in God. Well, I got to tell you, the first wound that you got to get over is to make a decision about whether you believe God is real. Because you can't operate in kingdom reality. You can't utilize the kingdom operating system until you have a relationship with God. But once you have a relationship with God, then you have a choice. So for you today, if you're just going, man, I don't even know this whole thing about God, then I want to invite you to this. You come up front here during the prayer time. You can just stand or you can kneel, do whatever you want. Just kind of slip your hand up a little bit. And if you slip your hand up a little bit, standing or kneeling up here in just a few moments, I'll come or one of our prayer team members will come and we'll just talk with you and we'll help you know God this morning. It starts today. But for others of you, you say, look, I know God. I've accepted forgiveness. I got the basic facts, but I don't feel free at all. What's the one wound in your life that you like to believe that you could get over? Here's the second question. What would it take for you to let go? Let me just tell you how real I was trying to be when I was preparing this. I wrote down a few things. What would it take for you to let go? One idea is revenge. Like, I'd let go if I could get revenge on the person who hurt me. Another thing I wrote down was pain for the person. The person who hurt me, if they went through as much pain as they caused me, then I could let go. Maybe you've had that conversation in your own mind. Maybe you've written that down somewhere. I will not rest until, and you put down how much pain you want that other person to experience. Or maybe you said, the situation restored. Like, I'll let go if things could get back to the way they were before this happened. What would it take for you to let go? Here's a third question. Would you believe that God's kingdom desire is for you to be free from what has trapped you? If you could get to that place where you would actually believe that God's kingdom desire is for you to be free, for you to actually not be defined anymore by that tent stake that got driven deep in the soil of your soul years ago. If you could be free of that, do you believe that's God's will for you? That He wants you to be free? If you do, then I want to make an invitation to you. We're going to have just a few moments here at the end of the service, and we have some soft music playing. We're not going to do anything else, no singing or anything, just some soft music, and we're going to give you an opportunity to come up here. We don't have carpet on these stairs yet, so I know they're hard, so I just sat down on them. So if you want to do that, you can. If you want to kneel on the ground, you can. If you just want to stand up, you can. If you would like to come and just spend some time praying, you go, wait a minute, it's not only just the coffee and the donuts, but I didn't sign up for coming up front, okay? That's okay. You can pray right where you are, but can I tell you something about getting out of your chair? First of all, the moment you step out of your chair, you're going to immediately feel back pain. You're going to go, oh, maybe I shouldn't move. You're immediately going to go, well, I don't know if I want to come up front because what are people going to think? Well, folks, I promise you that what people think is not near as important as what your Father thinks. And your Father longs for you to be in a loving embrace with Him, free of anything that's keeping you trapped. Whenever I pray up here, it's not for show, folks. It's for me and my Father. You got to keep a clean account with God, and a short one, folks. You let stuff build up, it's corrosive. The book of Hebrews says that root of bitterness can consume you. Folks, I know this is a big issue. I know it's an issue for those of us who want to love God. So if you're here today and you say, wait a minute, I don't even know God, you come up front, you can stand right here, just kind of barely lift your hands up. We'll have some members of our prayer team. They'll come talk with you and pray with you. Maybe you want to come up here and you want to just pray all by yourself, and that's totally awesome. You can do that. I'm going to kneel for a little bit, but then my knobby knees get hurt, so I'll just probably sit for a little bit. If you want to pray by yourself, you can, but if you want to be prayed with, you just put your hand up a little bit, just kind of a little bit. And members of our prayer team will just come and pray with you. They'll pray gently and carefully, because the business is really between you and God. Would you close your eyes with me? Holy Spirit, I've sensed that you've been moving throughout this room today, and I don't know and I don't need to know. But Holy Spirit, I just sense that there are hundreds of people in this room. Every one of us in some way, shape, or form would just go, I would not want to tell anybody, but man, Pastor, deep inside my soul, there's this thing. And Holy Spirit, I think you've been stirring up people's hearts, and I think people know in this room that there's stuff. There's just pain from our past that we've never quite been able to let go. Holy Spirit, I pray that you would just dislodge that stuff. And that we begin the process of getting free from the trap of offense. That our first step today would be to acknowledge it. To just come to grips with the reality that it is there. And for many of us, we've been trapped by it for days, weeks, months, years, maybe even decades. So Father, in the next few moments, as we just make space for you, I pray that your Spirit would continue to move. Lord, I pray that if there's someone in this room who would say, you know what, I don't even know God, that they would not be able to be bolted to their seat. Instead, they would just go, I'm going to make today the day. They would come up and understand what forgiveness and freedom is all about. That they could have life and relationship with you. God, would you do your work now? As Mark plays, I ask God that your Spirit would move and that we would respond. get up from where you're seated and come on up to the front. Just kneel at the altar. Let's do business with God in the next few moments. We're just going to make space for Him. Come and pray.